Hey nerds, I'm reviewing and breaking down Only Murders in the Building, episode 8 of season 4, Lifeboat. As usual, the title references a classic film, but does this week's episode bring us closer to solving the case, or is it more of a filler? Let's break it down right now. Welcome back to the Nerd Social. I'm Nathan. As always, if you want to jump ahead of this intro to my analysis or rating, see the chapter links below. So I'm a little behind this week because of other reviews and also other work for my other jobs. So instead of doing 2 videos, I'm going to just combine my review and breakdown into one video this week because it's been over 24 hours since the latest episode has dropped. I saw this episode in episode 9 about 3 weeks ago, and I'll probably record a breakdown of episode 9 in the next day or so because there's a lot to talk about there. So as for this week's episode, as I mentioned, it's titled Lifeboat, a direct reference to Alfred Hitchcock's 1944 film. The title is especially fitting as we see the trio and their new allies navigating group dynamics while dealing with the unfolding mystery. But does it live up to the high standard we expect from the series? Let's dive a little deeper. The spoiler-free logline for this episode is Charles, Oliver, and Mabel combine forces with the film actors in a tense showdown against the Westies. Can they navigate the group's secrets and survive the pressure? You can't handle the truth. This episode was directed by Sherry Springer Berman and Robert Puccini, who bring a sharp eye to the visual style and pacing. The script, written by Kristen Newman and Jack Sneasel, adds a mix of humor and personal development, though it doesn't quite deliver the same punch as some of the season's previous episodes. At this point, in previous reviews, as I've said, I've gone through all the main cast and mostly the additional players, so I won't go through that again here. I will note Griffin Dunn plays Milton Dutinoff. He showed up in previous episodes, so I can mention it here. He is known for After Hours and Dallas Buyers Club. There is a link above to playlists for previous reviews if you want more information about the other cast members. All right, tuck in while I start to analyze this. The use of Lifeboat as the title is a smart move. It's directly referenced within the episode. There's a voiceover that explains the film's premise, where a group of strangers in Lifeboat slowly unravel each other's secrets. This reflects what's happening with our trio and the zany guest characters as they're forced to work together. The dynamics at play in this episode mirror the claustrophobic tension of the movie, though it doesn't quite reach the same level of intensity. The actors who were annoying in the previous episodes in the season are starting to settle in and become more tolerable for me and actually funny at times. And in this episode, there were some funny moments, though the laugh out loud humor that we love from the show was more sporadic here. The episode leans into the quirkiness of the characters, which is fun, but it lacks some big comedic beats or some of the touching moments that we had in the previous episode. There are some interesting developments in the relationships between Oliver and Zach, as well as a little progress between Eugene and Charles. While these moments are nice, they don't reach emotional highs of last week's episode, which felt more personal. This episode feels more like it's laying the groundwork for future developments. To be honest, this episode feels like a bit of filler. There's one major revelation toward the end that pushes us toward the next episode, but for the most part, it's setting the stage rather than delivering big plot points or clues. We get more insight into the guest characters and some minor personal moments. The case itself moves incrementally forward. As I said, the episode maintains the show's signature humor, but it feels more subdued. The quirky characters are amusing, but there aren't as many laugh out loud moments as we've come to expect from the series. It's a lighter, more character-focused episode. So, in my final analysis, Lifeboat earns a date night rating, or 6 on our scale, and if you're unfamiliar with our scale, it's below in the description. It's a solid, enjoyable episode, but it doesn't have the same level of humor, emotional depth, or major case of elements as the show's best episodes this season. This feels more like a table-setting episode for what's to come, but it's still fun to watch for fans of the series. All right, I'm going to start breaking down this episode. So if you haven't seen the episode, like I said, it's been over 24 hours. Go see the episode because from here on out, I'm getting into spoilers. All right, so final warning, spoilers ahead. All right, diving a little bit deeper into the title of this episode. As I've mentioned a couple times now, this week's episode references Lifeboat from 1944, a war drama directed by Alfred Hitchcock. Based on a story by John Steinbeck, the film is set entirely on a lifeboat and explores themes of survival, morality, and human nature during a time of crisis. Known for its tightly confined setting and psychological tension, Lifeboat is a gripping exploration of character dynamics and the ethics of survival. We start this episode with a teaser. Dudnoff does a voiceover about the Hitchcock movie, Lifeboat, describing the film, similar to what I just now did, and outlining the themes of this episode, which is about surviving together and found family in a tight group. The Westies, as we now know them, arrive at his apartment and he tells them he will change their lives. We learned about this in a previous episode when Mabel suspected the Westies and was told about the rent control scheme Dudnoff set up. Of course, we learn more about the man in this episode. So in the first act, we see the trio returning to New York after a brief hideout in Long Island with Charles's sister. They now suspect the Westies were involved in both Dudnoff's death and Zaz's murder. Oliver's car breaks down on the way back from Long Island, and they have a humorous conversation with the actors who refuse to go back to the movie and now are fully immersed in the investigation, much to the trio's dismay. They discuss a safe place to have a conversation about the case. Eugene suggests using the studio set modeled after Charles's apartment to plan the ambush. Charles is annoyed at the inaccurate recreation of his apartment, point out misplaced books and vinyl records. They humorously talk and veto several ideas on how to lure the Westies, including promises of Tony Danza from Eugene and Eva's ding-dong soap opera style surprise. They eventually settle on a star-studded game of Oh Hell to draw the Westies to Oliver's apartment. This is also where we have some personal storylines with Ava's multi-tool, which is also a recorder, Oliver's wedding planning with Zach, and Charles' suppression of his emotion touched on in a previous episode with his sister are introduced. So later, the Westies arrive at Oliver's apartment for the card game. Initially friendly, the mood quickly shifts when Vince locks the door and Rudy pulls a knife. The Westies take their phones, making it clear they are aware the trio know about the check cashing scam. In Act 2, the trio accused the Westies of killing Dudnoff. The Westies deny this, asserting their love for Dudnoff. One by one, the Westies share how they came to know Dudnoff. Alphonse explains that after Dudnoff's wife died, he frequently ordered food from their restaurant and they bonded over playing Oh Hell. Rudy recounts how Dudnoff was his film professor and performs a humorous long scene from A Few Good Men that only Oliver is into. He mentions that Dudnoff introduced him to the hobby of ham radio as well. Eugene tries to elicit a reaction from Charles about it possibly being Vince, but Vince shares how they connected over classic films like It's a Wonderful Life, and also their being widowers, finding common ground in their loneliness. The Westies claim that Dudnoff moved to Portugal and they continue cashing his checks with his blessing. Then we get a ding-dong surprise. Mabel pulls the ding-dong surprise to Eva's delight by bringing Helga, the locksmith who had been speaking to them over the ham radio. In Act 3, we get Helga's account. Helga explains her connection to through the locksmith business she inherited from her father and how she became part of the Westies' Friday night card games. She also reveals that after Dudnoff left a note saying he was moving to Portugal, she noticed power surges, which she knew only happened when the incinerator was in use. She also noted that the Westies had been listening to the Only Murders podcast, which made her suspect them more, which is why she moved out. It's unclear to me where she lived or why her pig was in the apartment. It's also really unclear why she left her pig. Anyway, realizing they are caught, Vince takes the group to his apartment and reveals a hidden film canister under the floor. The film shows the events of Dudnoff's final night. He summoned the Westies to the basement and explained that he only had a few months to live and concocted a plan to fake his move to Portugal, asking the Westies to burn his body in the incinerator after he took a lethal dose of pills. The goal was to allow them to continue living in the apartment and cash his checks. The Westies agreed, but were told not to inform Helga as Dudnoff didn't want her to experience another father figure's death, which is why he recorded a film with his message to Helga just in case she found out. So this actually really doesn't make sense to me as a plan, because if she was so attached to him that she think of him as a father figure, would she really be okay with him moving, leaving her note, and never speaking to her again? Whatever. Anyway, after the actual true tale is told to the group, Eva reveals that she was secretly recording the entire confession on her multi-tool. But Mabel convinces her to delete the audio. Mabel sees the Westies as kindred spirits, people who, like the trio, found an unconventional family in their shared isolation. The trio decides not to use this story for the podcast, sparing the Westies from jail. This again ties into the title of the episode and the 1944 film. Other than Mabel letting them go is sweet, but the NYPD and the FBI can really come to the same conclusions. They know that the checks are being cashed. They also know that he's dead. This is all information the trio has because Detective Williams gave it to them. I feel like they're gonna get caught, but anyway, in a final act of the episode, just as the trio thinks they've hit a dead end with Zaz's murder, Helga reveals a key detail. She had been speaking with Zaz on the ham radio, and Zaz mentioned that a former stunt protege from the film Project Ronkonkoma had been harassing her. Zaz had expressed fear that the stuntman might kill her, even saying he's dangerous and he's going to be the death of me. The trio searches for the identity of the stuntman and discovers it's none other than Glenn Stubbins, who is currently in a coma. And that's the end of the episode. All right, so like in previous recent weeks, I'm going to go over the resolved and unresolved issues. Resolved, we finally know that Dudnoff orchestrated his own death by taking pills and asking the Westies to cremate him. The Westies did not murder him, but carried out his last wishes. And number two, the Westies' role. Again, as I said earlier in the season, when the Westies said they were innocent because it was just a rent scam, if they are to be believed, the Westies are cleared of suspicion of Dudnoff's death and not responsible for Zaz's death. Their involvement was limited to continuing Dudnoff's scheme. And I guess the other thing that's been resolved here is that Ava has deleted the recording of the Westies' confession, sparing them exposure from jail for now. Anyway, the things that are unresolved: Zaz's murder. The real killer behind her death still remains at large. However, there is a new lead involving Glenn, which I'll get back to in a second. Number two, the actor suggested the killer has known the trio since season 1. We still don't know the relationship between the killer or killers in the trio or the motive behind the sustained attacks. Are the mysterious text message sent to the trio linked to the same person behind the earlier threats, such as no to Jan? So the sender's identity remains unknown. We assume that it's the killer. Zaz's voicemail to Bev indicated that there was a serious issue with the Only Murders movie, but the nature of the problem is still unclear. This unresolved detail might provide a stronger motive for the murder. Detective Williams is still gathering more information about the gun that found at Zaz's academy, but her findings still aren't revealed by the end of this episode, leaving this aspect of the investigation unsolved. We heard about left-handedness in the previous episode, and we still haven't resolved that issue. And in this episode, we find out that Glenn Stubbins, Zaz's former stunt protege, is now a key suspect, but he's currently in a coma, making it difficult for the trio to question him. And also, he was possibly shot, unless he's being double-crossed. I guess we'll see next week. So what did you think of Lifeboat? Did the slower pace and character moments work for you? Or were you hoping for more case developments? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed this review, don't forget to like and share and subscribe for more in-depth analysis of film and TV. All right, guys, see you in the next one. Bye.